Lost Whispers, Part 4. Liv stepped onto the porch and saw her father waiting in the doorway. She turned to look at Brian. "Thanks, I'll take it from here." Brian waved at her as he placed her bike down at the end of the driveway and walked off into the night. "I tried to call you. Where the hell were you? And who was that boy?" "Dad, my phone died, and I got a flat tire. That was Brian, Henry's brother. He walked me home so I wouldn't have to alone, that's all." Ray doubted she was lying. She was never very good at it. "Well, get in the house and go straight to your room. Wait, there's pizza if you're hungry." He struggled to turn his place with his crutches, almost losing his balance, and then sighed, looking at Liv, who looked terrified now. "Sorry, Dad." "It's fine. Just be mindful next time. You girls know I worry, and it's not easy. What do you think I would do if something happened to you?" "I know, Dad. I'm sorry." Ray nodded, and that was the end of it. The next weekend was homecoming, and so Mia was preparing herself for the homecoming dance with Henry. Henry was so sweet on Mia that he took off Thursday and Friday before her homecoming to ensure that he had his tuxedo and everything was prepared. That night, Ray shaved his head, nearly bald, and found a nice polo shirt and some khaki pants to put on. He made sure to look nice for when Henry picked Mia up so that when Aunt Cecily took photos of him with her, he wouldn't look so unkempt. Liv smiled at her sister and noticed how pretty Mia looked with her dark brown hair up in an Aubrey Hepburn style from Breakfast at Tiffany's. She wore a black dress with silver and blue lace at the bottom that bunched up just above her knees. The midnight blue complemented her dark eyes. Liv never realized how much her sister looked like their father until that moment. They both had the same kind of brown eyes. Henry brought out the kindness in Mia instead of the misplaced rebellious anger that once lived there. Ray smiled sweetly in their photos, and tears found themselves glazing in his eyes. He kissed her on the cheek while balancing one leg, and in the other stuck her tongue out at Liv while giving funny ears behind her head. Liv looked at her sister, and they both laughed, sharing a happy moment. Mia went on to her homecoming dance in a limo furnished by Henry's parents, and inside were Mia's two friends, Elle and Daniela. They all had dates, but only Mia had the college boy. When they got to their homecoming dance, the school gym was decorated so that it was unrecognizable in some sweaty and smelly place that it normally was. It had midnight blue and purple balloons all over, wall-to-wall colored wall sheets with paper and stars made of glitter painted all over them. Mia couldn't wait to get to the restroom to touch up her nose that she worried was not so shiny from the abominable humidity that had hit the Ohio air that night. October was upon them soon, but for now she had to make sure she didn't appear greasy or ugly for her date. "I can't believe you snagged a college freshman," said Daniela to Mia. "I know. Anyone is better than my last boyfriend, but Henry is so completely perfect. Did you see the flowers he bought me?" "Yes. Now if only my date could be half as romantic," Daniela said, rolling her eyes. "Oh, how is my lipstick?" asked Elle. "It looks red and perfect as usual," Daniela said, rolling her eyes again and straightening her long green dress out. "You two always look perfect." "Hardly. I feel so nervous because Henry and I only recently started going out. He's only kissed me on the cheek," Mia whined, pinching her cheeks in the mirror and adding a little more color to them. "Oh my gosh, this is my favorite song. We have to go dance, girls." Daniela dragged Mia and Elle out to the dance floor, and the three of them danced together, laughing as their dates watched on from a punch bowl. Mia spent the entire night so proud of herself for getting Henry to go on a date with her, and finally, to homecoming at that. This precious night was beginning to be a tremendous senior year, she thought, all night as she now slow danced the night away with Henry in her small arms. Mia had grown up to be so beautiful, Ray thought, sitting on the sofa admiring the photos of his cellular taken earlier that evening. He sighed as he listened to the quiet of the house for once on a Friday night. He could watch whatever he wanted without the girls complaining. Mia was at her dance with her new boyfriend, and Ray wondered what he would do to Henry if he broke Mia's heart. Liv was with her friends Nina and Becky, attending the homecoming game, and then spending the night with Becky. Ray sighed to himself, deep in thought, when he heard it. There was a large knocking sound coming from the basement door. It sounded as if maybe the cats had gotten locked down there and were trying to get out. He managed to get up quickly, as he was getting better at this one leg thing now. He moved closer to the door. When he got closer, he realized he could hear the same knocking on the wall behind him. He thought it was strange. Ray. He heard a light whisper. He turned, and there, behind him, was that pale woman in white, glaring at him with those dark, evil eyes. Ray turned to move and fell to the floor, hitting his head, knocking himself out. The night wore on, and when it was time to go home, Henry walked Mia to her door and planted a long-awaited first kiss upon her lips. As Mia went inside her home, she noticed all the lights were out, but didn't think much of it at first. She went to turn on the light in the living room, but saw that the power was out. "Dad? Hello?" She called out into the darkness as she checked the lamp on the side table next to the couch. It wouldn't click on either. So she opened the drawer and pulled out a flashlight that her dad had put there for emergencies. No sound came from the room, and she looked around, barely noticing the shadow behind her. She walked through the living room, down the hall, into the kitchen. The floor squeaked. Mia figured her father had went to bed early, and so she took off her shoes, just rubbing her ankles, and then she proceeded toward the refrigerator. She hadn't eaten all night long. Maybe there's something in here I can snack on before all goes bad. Typical dad, having no clue. Probably didn't pay the stupid electric bill. Mia mumbled under her breath as she used the flashlight to sort through and found some string cheese to satisfy her hunger. She placed the flashlight under her armpit. As she worked on the wrapper, pulling it apart as best she could, she pulled, and finally the package jerked open, causing the flashlight to fall from her armpit to the kitchen floor. It spun in a natural circle on the tile floor, and as she bent down to pick it up, she saw them. Eyes on the floor stared up at her, a foot or so in front of her. She couldn't process it at first, but there was a glimmer of flashlight shining upon them that let her know these were human eyes. The two eyes glared at her, and then she saw teeth appear into a wicked grin, and a cackle came out of them. Tears fell from Mia's eyes, and she remained immobilized in the dark, just a few feet away from this thing that met with her, this menacing void of white teeth, this maw that had a familiarity to them. It wasn't until it spoke she recognized the cold, calculating voice that came from its mouth. "Mia, my sweet, sweet Mia." It slithered on the floor toward her, and she fell backwards. "Dad? Dad, stop, this isn't funny," she screamed. He moved slowly, taking a great deal of pleasure from the act of scaring her to death. This thing calling her sweet was not her sweet father. This thing was dark and menacing, and Mia managed to stand up and run towards the basement door. Without thinking that this may even be worse, she opened the door and closed it behind her. As she did, she fell the 12 stairs onto the basement floor, skinning her right knee and left elbow. Her cell phone remained gripped tightly in her hand as she screamed in pain. Her eyes focused on the door at the top of the stairs as it began to slowly creak open. The only light that came to view was from her tightly clutched cellular phone as she watched the creature descend into the stairs down towards her. Part 5. Mia screamed again and managed to crawl away from this thing that had stolen her father's face. She couldn't seem to move fast enough as it crawled with one leg dragging behind him and his hands like an animal. Mia couldn't breathe as she was suffering from panic in the highest form imaginable. She grabbed her phone and hid under a large box just under the basement stairs. As she held her phone up to her ear, her hands shaking, she managed to dial 911. The operator came on, but before she could speak, something grabbed her from above. It was her father's large hands, and he had somehow managed to crawl down the stairs, and he was just hanging there. He pulled at her and laughed with a guttural growling. It made her feel like she was about to die. Just then, the lights came back on, and she was able to get a good look at the man who was trying to tear her from limb to limb. His face was yellowish, and his eyes were entirely black as he foamed at the mouth. His face was now distorted into a permanent grin, and his strength was that of two men. He pulled at her again until she found the courage to punch him in the face. When she did, her father seemed to snap out of whatever thing was holding him in its possession. She watched him as he looked at her for a long moment, not understanding what was happening. He looked at his daughter's torn dress and her bleeding knee and elbow, and looked at the disposition he had still had a grip on her hair, and he held her in his hands. Ray quickly let go of her, and she dropped onto the concrete floor in a sob of tears. He couldn't get to her fast enough to see if she were okay, but as he reached out closer to her, she screamed in fear and backed away from him. The feeling inside of him now broke him into two tears of confusion, welled up into his eyes as he grabbed the phone from her hands and dialed the police himself. The police came, but there wasn't much they could do because Ray seemed stable for the most part. Aunt Cecily rushed over as fast as she could, and she made a point to pick up Liv on her way back. Liv had no idea what was even going on, and she thought that perhaps her father had been injured in an accident. It was not till she saw Mia's face that she knew something was dreadfully wrong. Her father stood behind her, keeping his distance. Aunt Cecily went to Ray's side, and when she touched his arm, he fell over onto the front steps of the old home's porch and cried in agony. She looked at Mia, who was avoiding her father, and wouldn't even look at him. "What happened?" Liv asked her sister, and when she failed to even look at her sister, she knew then that something life-changing had occurred. Mia told her aunt the story, and Liv listened with suspicious eyes. Aunt Cecily was not sure what to think. "It's final. You girls are coming to stay with me until this is straightened out." She looked at Ray, who didn't even bother to put up a fight in his distress. "I don't believe you," said Liv, tears welling up in her eyes. "Dad would never hurt you or me." "You were not there, Olivia. You didn't see the look in his eyes. It was something I will never forget. There was something so evil in them." She began to cry again, and Liv looked at her sister, still not convinced that her father would try to attack her sister in any way. "It's this house. We all have to get out of here." "What does this stupid old house have to do with anything, Liv?" "It's haunted, Mia, and you know it. Don't you remember the morning Dad rushed us to breakfast for no reason? I know he saw something. I know it. Now, it's hurting our dad. Then he needs to get out of here too. Get your things, Liv. We're going to Aunt Cecily's house." "No, I don't want to go. I want to stay here with Dad. I don't want to leave him here all alone." Mia looked at her sister with empathy and anger, and then she closed her eyes. "Liv, you can't stay here with Dad. Not after what happened. You may not be safe." "She's right, Olivia. Listen to your big sister." Ray had come over to them quietly and overheard what they were saying. "Dad, no. I don't want to go live with Mia and snobby Aunt Cecily. I want to be here with you." Liv began to cry and ran to her father, hugging him by the waist. "I know you do. But until we can get things straightened out, you need to be with your aunt where you can be safe." He watched Mia's eyes well up with tears, but then she calmly and slowly walked over to her dad and embraced him. She said nothing and quickly let go and ran toward the car and her Aunt Cecily standing nearby, talking to one of the last cops who were now leaving. Liv hung up on her dad. She couldn't leave him. Then she punched him in the chest. I don't want to go. And I hate you. I hate you for making me go. I hate this house and everything in it. Olivia, he yelled at her, but she was out of his sight and inside her aunt's car, sobbing alongside of her big sister. Ray stood there watching the two loves of his life drive away as he found himself alone and afraid now. The last of the cop cars had pulled away. No charges were filed because they thought Mia was just frantic for no reason. They took one look at Ray with his one leg and they felt sorry for him. There was no way a guy with one leg could do what that teenage girl had described. Ray stared at the house and his eyes were angry now, almost vengeful as they looked at it. Come on, you motherfucker, let's do this. He walked into the house and slammed the door. Liv refused to eat anything the following morning. Instead, she sulked in a corner reading a book. Anytime Mia would initiate conversation, Liv would ignore her and or cry and walk away from her. Mia could take it no longer. Olivia McDonald, eventually you will have to talk to your sister. Fuck off. Nice. You weren't under Dad's roof one day and you're already acting out? Mia rolled her eyes and sat down in front of Liv, almost to annoy her. Leave me alone. No, I refuse to at this point. You're just annoying enough to make me want to sit here and annoy you more. You're such a brat sometimes, Liv. I tried to tell you and Dad about the ghosts. You wouldn't listen to me, and now we have to live with Aunt Cecily. It isn't forever. It's just until Dad can figure out some stuff. I guess if it takes a priest or something, then hey, we're here till then. Liv, you didn't see what I saw on his face. It was so scary. I thought Dad was going to kill me. I know that look. The lady in white has it on her face every time she comes to see me at night. Mia finally began to believe her sister, and it took life's drama to bring her to that point. She put her arms around her sister and held her tight. She held her until Liv burst into uncontrollable laughter. It's so funny, asked Mia, annoyed. Your stupid hair is tickling my nose. You are literally the worst person in the world to have a heart-to-heart with. Just so you know. Just so we're clear. The girls went on to school that following Monday, and slowly and surely they began to contact with Ray again. Mia wouldn't see him, but she talked to him over the phone for brief moments and over text messages. She was still raw from the attack, which is entirely understandable for Ray. He didn't want to force it in any way, so he allowed her to keep her distance. After about 2 weeks had gone by, Mia agreed to go with Liv to collect some of their things and visit their dad after they both got out of school. Mia and Liv went with Aunt Cecily to the house, but Mia had asked Aunt Cecily to stay in the car until they had visited with their dad. Aunt Cecily sat in the car looking at her makeup and fixing her long extensions, and then she heard the screams. Liv and Mia walked into the house and noticed right away there was a foul odor, and their cat Luna was sticking in a corner, just meowing ferociously at them, so Mia opened a can of food to feed her. Liv was the first one to notice the smell, and then looked at Mia. Dad knew we were coming today. Where is he? Mia turned pale, recalling the night the 2 weeks earlier when her father was nowhere to be found before she had been attacked. Luna gobbled her food and was no longer paying the girls any mind as she devoured the plate and seemed to be making slurpy noises. Luna's eating was the only sound the house was making at this moment. Mia and Liv looked at one another, and Mia gulped. I'll go see if he's sleeping upstairs. I'll go to the basement, Liv said, patting her sister with empathetic eyes. Mia nodded and then went towards the stairs and began to call for her father. Dad? Dad, are you up here? Liv said you knew we were coming. When Mia got upstairs, she found clothes strung about in her dad's favorite work shirt, and he was always wearing during the week, and it was just thrown over the floor. Everything was strewn out on the floor. That was unusual for him, and Mia felt then that something wasn't right. Liv continued her journey to find her dad, but it didn't take her very long. At the bottom of the stairs lay her father, Ray. His eyes were open, staring into the sky, and his skin pale and sunken under his eyes. He had been there for a while, and that was most likely what the smell was when they walked into the front door. Liv went to his side as though he would get up and walk again up those stairs. Mia was holding her dad's shirt when she felt a cool breeze blow into the window of his bedroom. It hit her with its sweet smell of early fall, and she could smell the cornfields. And something then and there told her the news even before she heard her sister scream. Mia looked at Liv as they sat in the back of her aunt's car while she made necessary phone calls. Neither one of them said anything, but they both suspected what, or whoever was haunting the house, had killed their father. The day of the funeral came faster, neither for the girls, and they weren't even ready for it. They were both prepared before dawn, while Mia enjoyed a cup of coffee with her uncle. Liv sat staring at herself in the mirror, trying to decide if she looked as grown up as she should for being nearly in high school now. When she thought about it, she cried a bit, as she knew there would be no photos of her senior prom or homecoming with her dad. He was gone. He was gone with the wind now, and was never coming back. If only Mia had let her stay with him instead of dragging her to Aunt Cecily's, maybe there was something she could have done to save him. She was thinking about how much she hated Aunt Cecily when her aunt came in and sat down on the bed. Liv now slept. "I wanted you to have this," she said, tears filling her eyes. "This was your mom's before she passed. It's a 3-way locket. It has a photo of Mia. On the other side, a photo of you and your dad. The prayer of St. Jude is inscribed on the inside of it. It was your mother's favorite prayer." Liv realized that in there was the reason her father recited that prayer every single night before he slept. It was her mother's favorite. "Why give this to me? I'm not the oldest." "Well, because I felt it should go to you, not your sister." Liv looked at the locket and held it in her thin hands. Aunt Cecily grabbed her and hugged her tightly. Then and there, for the first time, Liv felt like her aunt actually loved her. Being a woman, she never realized how much she needed a female mother figure until then. "Thank you," Liv said, crying into her aunt's neck. Her Aunt Cecily always smelled good. She never noticed how much until then. Chanel No. 5 was blazing through her nostrils, and Liv didn't care. She just held on tight. She held the locket that held her father's favorite prayer, the prayer of St. Jude, on the outside. He gave her some comfort as she held on to it, clutching it towards her chest, all during the calling hours. When most of the attendees had disappeared, Liv went over to the coffin, and just before they closed the casket for the funeral, she placed the locket inside of her father's hands. To be continued.